Well, we welcome you back, our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media on this Wednesday evening, being part two of tonight's conversation with myself, Inayat Wadi, on this Wednesday evening. We are going to be focusing on the global Sumud land convoy. Now, for many of us that have been following developments with regard to the global Sumud movement, the flotilla, or also the land convoy, I think many of us who were at the at Or Tambo Airport when the five activists had actually arrived after being detained in the Israeli prisons. And I think there was just so much interest actually. And I must say that, just connecting once again with the activists and getting their side of the story as well. And the same goes for the Global Sumud Land Convoy. We know it was launched on the 15th of May, Nakba Day. And this convoy actually operated overland as a counterpart to the Global Sumud Flotilla maritime mission that had taken place. And yesterday, we heard about in fact, our colleagues at Salam Media were there at the press conference where we heard about the interception, about the heavy bureaucratic blocking, the arbitrary detention of the negotiating team, who are still being detained by Libyan forces. And joining me this evening are three of the activists. We have got Dr. Fatima Hendricks, who is no stranger. She is an activist as well, no stranger to South Africa as well. Jessica Breakey, who is also an activist as well. And also we have got a third activist, and I don't see Zukiswa here. Perhaps she's having, there we go, Zukiswa Wanner joining us as well. To all of you, assalamu alaikum and welcome. We do appreciate your time.
Alaikum salam.
Yes, Dr. Fatima, I'd like to actually begin with you because, you and I, this discussion is long overdue. You did promise me that you will be on Salam Media with myself, but finally we've had the opportunity of having you here as well. And just, looking at some of the feedback that I've been getting coming through from the press conference that was hosted yesterday, and clearly, obviously another shocking or more shocking revelations compared to also what we've seen was what had happened to those who were part of the flotilla as well. When we heard, when they had their press conference as well, horrific stories that started to emerge.
Yes, greetings to you and the listeners. I really wanted to give a particular space to our comrade Jessica to cover a lot of the conversation around the land convoy. So I'll just give some kind of brief introduction that it is really been a civilian-led grassroots effort across North Africa in its second iteration, moving from Algeria, Tunisia, and into Libya. We had some comrades come from Morocco and from Mauritania. But it's a civilian-led initiative, and we are trying to make a sustainable passage of flow of essential emergency relief to Gaza via land. And we know Gaza has been under siege, right? Land and sea and air. And so it really begs the question, why are we being blocked? Why are we being blocked from what should be a natural flow of goods through neighboring countries? And why are we being blocked in international waters, in territorial waters, and not just blocked, like violently opposed? And so the kinds of violence that is being meted out to us is really unprecedented in recent history around grassroots movement mobilization that is fundamentally nonviolent. And so I think we have to really interrogate that in terms of the complicities. And of course, Libya is a difficult country to be in because of militia patronage issues. And, after the fall of Gaddafi, there obviously has been a lot of militarization and the security situation is actually really unstable, making this land convoy, even more important to say that, these are people that have mobilized these specialized healthcare workers and engineers, ordinary people, volunteers, together with Turkey, like all the aid that came from Turkey, and some of our other donors. We had like 7 ambulances, motor vehicles. We had containers of aid that was going to be loaded in Egypt. We had trucks with mobile homes, etc. So, there is really, it's become so scary. And then having 11 of our comrades detained, and accused of illegal migration, knowing that they went to that border as known people with their passports in registered vehicles, and it being their 3rd attempt. And so we're calling this just really a break of international law, a break of the fact that we have all had visas to be present in Libya. So yes, Jessica is actually a researcher that does a lot of work in the Mediterranean, and she's been doing her PhD. So she can really paint a very, very good picture for us in terms of the geopolitics. And then
Yes,
Zukiswa.
Zukiswa, as Dr. Fatima has mentioned, let's hand over to you. If you could unmute your mic, please, Zukiswa. Your mic is muted.
Right. Okay. No, I mean, I think obviously we are constantly outraged right now globally to realize that humanitarian aid isn't being allowed. And yet these are basic human rights. This, as far as the United Nations are concerned, in fact, obviously one of the things that we're wondering is why the United Nations itself hasn't even suspended Israel as a member nation, given all these atrocities that it's committing. Other countries have been suspended for so much less or expelled for so much less. But with that in mind, we keep hoping that civilians will be pushing. The more the civilians continue to push, the more that we can actually have governments shamed into acting. And so, of course, our comrades are currently being held by the Eastern Libyan militia. We're worried about them, and we are watching our other comrades in Italy, mobilizing so that for their freedom, and we seeing what we can do ourselves to mobilize for their freedom, as well as, of course, continual mobilization for the freedom of the Palestinians who are being held as hostage in Israeli jails.
Yes, Zukiswa. And also, I think, Jessica, I think what is important to understand is the importance of a mission like this. And we've seen over a period of time how the global Sumud movement has actually grown in leaps and bounds, whether we're talking about the flotilla, whether we're talking about the land convoy. One cannot forget when in Egypt, they opened the Rafah crossing as well. And now for the second time, now that you've been blocked in Libya. And some people will say, what have you achieved? Because you're going to be blocked in any way. It's symbolic in nature. But again, it cannot be symbolic in any way whatsoever, because it is sending a very, very powerful message. And the messaging is making an impact globally, with regard to activism for Palestine, but also on a political level.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And can I just say I spent every minute of every day with Dr. Fatima for 23 days. And so it's very strange now looking at her beautiful face on the other side of the screen instead of next to me on the bus. But I think the impact of the material and symbolic impact of the land convoy is something that I care very deeply about. Mohammed, who was our 3rd delegate, who is unfortunately quite ill and so not able to be here today, him and I were initially intended to be participants on the flotilla this year. And of course, both Zukiswa and Dr. Fatima have both been part of the Global Sumud Flotilla initiatives before last year. And when we were redeployed to join the land mission, both of us we didn't really know much about the land mission at the time, but we both felt, wherever we will go, wherever we are needed, we will go wherever we are useful for the global movement for a free Palestine. But I am so glad that I made that decision or that I was redeployed, because the lessons from the Maghreb, I think, and their deep entanglement with Palestine is so, so significant. So, of course, Fatima already said that this convoy is an overland mission that moves from Mauritania to Rafah. And the sea holds so much political possibility. But the complicated political work of moving across these borders towards the Rafah crossing with hundreds of people from the Maghreb, from North Africa, was deeply impacting for me. And I think I learned so much. People often have, I think in a lot of the media, view the land convoy as a spin-off or sort of an addition to the flotilla. But the convoys have been moving through the Maghreb since 1948. Maghreb volunteers have been going to join the resistance in Palestine for decades, have been sending solidarity missions, have been sending aid missions for decades. And in the 2000s, they had successful missions where they were able to get both aid and specialized humanitarian assistance through the Rafah border. So we felt very much like we were part of that history, this long anti-colonial history of resistance. And I just want to say briefly that, the lessons that I learn in my life as a young activist, I always think are lessons from the Palestinians and Palestinians fighting for their freedom. And I think that those lessons are being seen now. So our 10 comrades who have been detained, we found out today, have been on hunger strike for 4 days. And that is, it's now confirmed by their legal representatives. And I think that the hunger strike has such a deep history with Palestinian prisoners. It's a way of refusing the sort of repression, the political oppression and the conditions of dehumanization that they face. And to see my comrades and friends now on day 4 of their hunger strike is very concerning, but at the same time, I feel not at all surprised that their steadfastness has encouraged them to do this.
Yes, Jessica. Dr. Fatima, you've obviously seen the best of both or the worst of both. If it depends on which way one looks at it, whether one looks at it from a flotilla perspective and also the land convoy as well. And just in terms of your experience, what was the experience like for you? What were some of your observations? What actually stood out for you?
I think, if anything, I just want to also, say that Dr. Zukiswa Wanner was there with me on a different boat. She was on the Florida and I was on the Amsterdam. But one of the things that really struck me, about this movement is the grassroots passion that ordinary people have in like radical love and collective care. People just showing up. So whether we were in the port, people were like, any connection to Palestine, that you were in some way connected to Palestine and that you were doing this, was met with so much of love and appreciation, because people across the world want to do something and not everybody knows how. And so we have this missed opportunity, or an opportunity to galvanize so many more people in struggles globally for equity, for equality, for justice, for freedom, in radical love. And it's just being open in providing the avenues and the different little resistances that we can do every day that can open up this movement. I mean, if you compare where this movement was a few years ago, pre-genocide, pre this genocide, we can see that, there is a massive movement unfolding. that still has so much, so long to go. And I'm very, very conscious that it's Youth Month, that it's June is Youth Month, and that we look at the 1976 uprisings here in South Africa. We look at the impact of the student movement from, the ANC Youth League right through across every political formation here in this country. This is the mobilization that we see in the flotillas, in the land convoys, in the encampments at the universities, in the protest in the streets. That's the kinds of youthful energy. Youth who are actually daring to say that we want a better world. And this is the world that we envisage. So for me, that has been really absolutely striking about people power. And that's what makes it so scary. That's why we have huge military coming after us. I mean, we're a nonviolent civilian movement. We have the might of the major superpowers, nuclear superpowers, coming after a couple of comrades on boats, in buses, and this is why we really vehemently push back that this is a performative exercise, that this is, any kind of hasbara that claims that this is for show, etc. This is a long-standing, legitimate movement of resistance.
Well, certainly, Dr. Fatima, and also I think Zukiswa, the point that we've been making over and over again as media as well is after witnessing the horrific genocide that is unfolding and still unfolding in Gaza, we said that Gaza obviously is going to change the world forever. It's going to determine what a new world order is going to be looking like. And we've seen activists from right across the entire world embrace what this new world order, speaking out against injustice, speaking out against genocide, speaking out, standing up against oppression. And this is exactly what we see when we look at the global Sumud movement as well. And I'm sure, you've interacted with people right across the entire world. And, we know, obviously, South Africa very much a part of this global movement as well. And just in terms of your observations and the experiences of the activists, Dr. Fatima spoke about coming up against superpowers, against nuclear powers, and just, for ordinary people, the average person in the street, to actually come up and taking a position and willing to stand up to the might of these superpowers.
I look at Dr. Fatima just said something very important insofar as, and I say this often as well, that Gaza is ground zero for our collective liberation as the world. And some of our comrades who were on the flotilla with us last year were actually part of those who went, and they were part of the flotilla that went to Cuba, because we understand that the system is the same. The system that's oppressing people, essentially, there is a demand by the 1% and their proxies to try and see just how much we can take as the people of the world. And that's why, the activism is so important, speaking up and making these ties and understanding that, if you don't speak up about the fact that there is a wall that has been built in Jerusalem and in Bethlehem, when a wall is being built in Cape Town, it's going to be very difficult to have people stand up with you and be able to see those parallels. Similarly, when you are looking then at the fact that one of our biggest issues as the South African Palestinian movement is the fact that Glencore is sending coal to Israel, to the Zionist entity, the coal that's coming from our land, while of course we know there are some people who are unable to get electricity in the same Mpumalanga where they're mining this coal. But this same Glencore is actually also responsible for the death of our brothers and sisters in the Congo, as they are also in the cobalt mines. So all these things are so interconnected, and we can't not look at that and see the connection and realize that once we push against global capital and settler colonialism, we are freeing ourselves.
Well, certainly, Zukiswa. And also, I think, Jessica, just listening to what Dr. Fatima spoke, and something came to mind when she spoke about coming up against nuclear armed nations, is I recall a comment that Ariel Sharon once made. And his comment was, the thing that I hate most is the Palestinian mother who gave birth to a Palestinian child who has the guts to take a stone and fling it against the Israeli army. This is exactly what Dr. Fatima is actually talking about. And we see this on a day-to-day basis. Dr. Fatima speaks about coming up against nuclear armed nations. This is what the Palestinians are experiencing on a daily basis. And just to look at it from your perspective, to come up against this whole bureaucratic armies and governments at the same time, like for example what had happened in Libya at this point in time. What did it feel like that these are obviously fellow Africans, number one. Everybody obviously had admired Libya, looks at Libya as a brotherly nation or a sisterly nation, for want of a better term as well. But yet to come up, in northern Libya, to come up against all this bureaucracy and to be treated in the manner that the activists were treated.
I mean, I wish I could say it was surprising, but I think, those who have been following for the last 3 years, those who are acquainted with, the history of the occupation, know that the tentacles of Zionism are everywhere, and I've spoken the story that I'm about to say. Fatima will roll her eyes because I've said it so many times, but there's a very famous quote by Nelson Mandela that everyone always references about how we're not free until the Palestinians are free. But Oliver Tambo specifically in 1973 made a speech at the African Union discussing when the African Union met to discuss Israel's occupation of the Sinai Desert of Egypt. There was a special meeting held to discuss Israel's existential threat on the peace and security of the African continent. And in that speech, Oliver Tambo spoke about how the Zionist entity posed this existential threat and how imperialism does not localize. And that has always stuck with me, about this idea that it does not localize. It is not just in the region. And I think it was clear as we came up against all these obstacles on the convoy that the imperialism of Zionism, that its tentacles had spread and continue to spread. And that's exactly what Zukiswa was talking about. These things are all connected and we need to be aware of them. We need to be sharp to them. We can't be surprised when we're sort of put up against that. I hope I'm not going. I just want to touch on one thing that Fatima said that also really stuck with me, about the ordinariness of it. Just a bunch of people on a bus. Because that, to me, is the power of the land convoy, is its simplicity. It's almost banal, right? It's just a bunch of people getting on a bus and trying to drive to people that are enduring genocide. And there were two groups of people on the land convoy. There was obviously a group of specialized humanitarian workers. We didn't just carry aid. And I want to say that it was not just symbolic. It was an insufficient amount of aid for the destruction in Gaza, but we did have a substantial amount of aid. We had 20 mobile homes, 10 ambulances. Our aid was substantial, insufficient, but substantial. And I think we also wanted to facilitate access for specialized workers like doctors and lawyers and stuff. But the other part of the convoy were just the most wonderful and the most ordinary people who were not specialized in anything, who were just had an unwavering commitment and solidarity to Palestine. And one of my closest friends that I made on the Comrade Bilal is a chef from Algeria, whose whole dream in his life is just to cook for the people of Gaza. And he came on the convoy with all his pots and all his pans and all his knives and spatulas and everything, because all he wants to do is to cook for the people of Gaza. And I think that that is the most beautiful and ordinary and human gesture.
Well, certainly, Jessica. In fact, I think Dr. Fatima, I'm sure that there's many a story that you can actually share as well in terms of the people that have been with you on the convoy as well. But I just want to come back and to understand the treatment of the activists, because that featured very, very strongly when the flotilla activists were detained by the Zionist entity, and there were some horrific stories that had surfaced. And now that we've had the detention of the 11 as well who attempted to negotiate, just take us through, because was there when we talk about bureaucracy and we talk about governments that are complicit in this genocide, or together with Israel as well, the impact or the influence of Israel on these governments as well, was that noticeable? Your mic is muted, Doc.
The whole landscape of Libya is an empire story of imperialism and colonialism in all of its tentacles, from the Berlin Conference of 1884 right up to the assassination of Gaddafi and all of that. I mean, it's a violent story, and that violence is so visible. I mean, the place that we were staying in Sirte, it was a camp, and it had bullets all over in the walls, and destroyed infrastructure was palpable throughout Libya. It's a story of reconstruction. When we were at Judeim Forest, Comrade Jessica just reminds me of one of our Turkish friends, and she used to make this this little joke about what he used to say, because we were, it was heightened anxiety. He would say, "Oh, don't worry," when we used to hear the bombs in the background, "little bombs," he used to say. So this kind of violence has become so normalized, where saviors from the empire want to come into these oppressed countries to rescue the people of that country. Yet what they do is come in with such illegality, immorality, and such violence that they actually destroy generations upon generations. And the rebuilding then is so painful and so hard. And it's these very countries that then want to come in to provide the aid and the help and the assistance for the unfortunate events that have taken place. So I want to reiterate what Dr. Zukiswa brilliantly said, which was really about the tentacles and this interwovenness of the struggles right across the world, around how it is about resource extraction, it is about greed, it is about stealing of the land, and it is about that 1%. So yes, there are many, many stories that we can share, but we have to be conscious of there's a time and a place for everything. And right now, our mission is, like the flotilla, gathering a lot of witness statements for both the flotilla and the land convoy, and legal teams are working on that at the moment. And the second factor, so it would be, we reserve comment. And the second factor is that we do have comrades that are still within Libya. We have 10 comrades who are being held, and we've seen some footage for the first time yesterday come out, which is a picture of them sitting in a military building in a reception hall. And that's our 10 comrades there. And we have one comrade in West Libya, because obviously West Libya has now been fractured into the so-called East and West, with the different, pressures and alliances between, for example, West Libya being more like Turkey and Russia aligned, and the East Libya with Haftar forces, with the US and Italy influences with the UAE. So there's this complicated geopolitics that is there. But we have comrades still in Libya. So the kind of violence that we can testify to, we need to do this in ways that, never, both for the flotilla and for the land convoy, never jeopardize the safety and security of any of our comrades' lives.
Yes, thanks for that, Dr. Fatima. Zukiswa, I think, what is also important to understand is there are just so many lessons that one can actually take from the global Sumud movement, whether it's a flotilla or the land convoy. And I think particularly for us on the African continent, and I know you alluded to the whole issue surrounding Glencore, which is a very, very thorny issue. It's a burning issue for us here in South Africa as well, where, on a continent that has been a victim of colonialism, of imperialism, there's just so much that has taken place. Yet, when we're looking at trying to framing a narrative and looking for Pan-African solidarity, particularly with those who are oppressed, and we are not seeing it. We, even in this country, and I think yesterday, Dr. Fatima, I think you alluded to this at the press conference as well, the Afrophobia or the xenophobia that is taking place in this country and right across the entire continent, where you see countries like Libya or the authorities not sympathetic with the Palestinian cause. There are countries on the African continent that ban Palestinian protests in this country, countries like Zambia. We've seen the inroads that the Zionist entity has made in many African countries, and putting all of that actually together obviously tells us that, we've got a lot of work to do on the African continent.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't seem to understand that we had nothing to do with the Berlin Wall project, the Berlin Conference project, which created the borders that has resulted in families being split across different borders. So you'll have one family 3, 4, 5 generations back, and they are in the geographical space that's called Zimbabwe, and others are in Mozambique, and others are in South Africa. But beyond that, we really just need to have a deeper conversation, because when we're not having, there's the myth of the Western values, which Dr. Fatima just talked about, where, the same people who are responsible are coming in with bombs and destroying, as we're seeing, as they did in Libya, as they've done to a certain extent in Egypt, as well as they've done in many other countries, are the ones who end up coming with their companies saying they're going to rebuild. And of course, we see that they're doing it to a very large extent in Gaza. They've done the same thing in Haiti. They're doing the same thing in Haiti and everywhere. And so we need to first dissuade ourselves of the myth of two things: the myth of Western values, because if nothing else, the ongoing genocide, but more so starting in the last from 2023, when it seems many more people started following on social media and became aware, is the myth of Western value. And the other thing is, the more that it continues and we don't do anything, it's essentially these guys manufacturing consent, because they're trying to see how much they can get away with. And so it's the importance then of movements like the Land Convoy and Global Sumud Flotilla is civilians saying, no, you're not going to stop us. We're going to keep pushing. And if you say no today, we're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to continue. And so when people say, oh, but you're not achieving anything, you're not going anything, that is exactly what we're achieving. We're achieving the fact that people are watching and many more people are becoming conscious. Just as I mentioned, from last year, when we did the Global Sumud Flotilla, I can tell you now that I can call people in Colombia, I can call people in Italy, I can call people in Malaysia, and I can say, folks, this is what we're doing in South Africa. We need your support. I just got back from Brazil, and I met up with comrades in Brazil, and one of them who'd been on the flotilla, Leandro, was also is very much in the energy embargo system as well, and it's trying to push for Brazil to stop sending oil to Israel in the same way that we're sending coal to Israel and South Africa. And of course, 35 countries already, and this is civilians acting. And the only language that politicians understand is when they think that they're going to lose elections. And so when civilians push so much and they say, we're not going to allow you to do this, otherwise you're going to lose our votes, politicians are then forced that they have to do something about it. So for instance, there are 35 countries right now where dock workers have refused to load any boats, any ships that are going to send any goods to Israel. And this is a way to start. And, I think South Africa, absolutely, our trade unions, they also need to come on board so that we don't have any of this, because we are literally the country that's sending the most coal to, the Zionist state of Israel right now.
Yes, Zukiswa. And also, Jessica, I recall, in fact, I heard a clip, actually, an interview that one of my colleagues had with you yesterday, where you commented on the complicity of governments in blocking the convoy to achieve its mission. And this is important to understand because, on the one hand, you've got all these countries that are complicit, or, some of them more openly than others, actually. But on the other hand, you've got countries, and we're speaking about banning of coal. We've seen the position that Colombia had actually taken in terms of banning coal exports. And also today, we've seen what has happened in Ireland, where the president of Ireland, Catherine Connolly, publicly called Israel a terror state. Now, these are bold statements, and this is what we expect with countries, particularly those that have been on the receiving end of oppression, of injustice, of colonialism, and that we don't see happening, because Libya, a country, we know what the Italians had actually done in Libya, and there was a huge cost that Libya had actually paid as a result of colonialism. But going into a country and seeing a country that is that shows signs and that may be also openly complicit, and treating the flotilla movement and the activists in the manner that they have.
Yes, I mean, I do just want to make a brief distinction that, when the land convoy did begin with the support of the so-called West Libyan government, and so I do want to make that distinction, because we were escorted by West Libyan security for until we reached the East Libyan buffer zone. But I think that what I've been thinking a lot about is the complicity, but also is about Israel's influence in Africa, in the global south. I mean, Israel had observer status in the AU, in the African Union, from 2021 to 2024, which boggles one's mind at how ridiculous that is, that Israel would have observer status in the African Union. But I think it's an important thing because it keeps us sharp. I keep saying we think, sorry. Israel's interest in South Africa and in Africa didn't end when apartheid ended. And this is a clear line that you can track, the division and the chaos that they have sown. After the Nigerian Civil War, where millions of people died, many of the weapons recovered were supplied by Israel. We can see now that there have been many, many reports written by the United Nations that M23 rebels in Rwanda are using Israeli weapons. And I think that it's not just power and influence that they hold, it's division, it's chaos, it's violence. That is also in their best interest. And I think we need to be sharp to that and build our solidarity around that. When we think about Pan-African solidarity with Palestine, it's not just Pan-African solidarity with Palestine, it's just us remembering the rich anti-colonial history of resistance that we have as a continent and as the global south. When Zukiswa is talking about her comrades in Colombia, all I can think of is what Glencore has done to people in Colombia. There are so many accusations of grotesque and violent human rights abuses by people in countries like Colombia against Glencore. And so it's not just about, oh, there's now an energy embargo because of the genocide. It's part of these entities, these institutions, having a long history of extraction and exploitation. And about our solidarity movement that is centered on Palestine being able to counter that, being able to push back against that. And we have that history. You know, we have these histories of this anti-colonial resistance and these collaborations, these solidarities. We just need to remember them. I mean, Dr. Fatima and I loved spending time with the Algerians on the convoy, of which there was many, because so much of our anti-apartheid history, our liberation leaders, were so deeply entangled with the liberation leaders of Algeria, of the FLN. I mean, Mandela went to their training camps to receive his training in Morocco, in Algeria. And these, I think, are the important lessons that to me do not sit outside of our solidarity with Palestine. They are always already connected.
Well, certainly. And also, I think, Dr. Fatima, I think, obviously we cannot be in our comfort zone in South Africa. And we are talking about the Israeli influence or the Zionist influence on the African continent and how this is impacted on the Sumud movement. But also one cannot be complacent in this country as well, because certainly, there are dangers that are lurking in this country. And we see a lot starting to surface as well, particularly with the whole issue about xenophobia, Afrophobia. A lot is being said, a lot is being written about what actually lies behind these movements and how these movements, and again, where there's smoke, there's fire. And sometimes, the alarm bells are ringing, the warning signals are there.
Yeah, and so we need to be candid. I mean, what we really need is to be really brutally candid and talk about why we're voting for parties like the Democratic Alliance and its and the network of parties that are being propped up by Zionist funding. And so, there's a candidness that we need to really explicate here, because, there was an article that everybody knows about the Times of Israel that, with the way forward for South Africa is a fractured state. And this is a result of the efforts that South Africa has made at the ICC, ICJ, pushing really the accountability against the Zionist entity. So what do we see in recent politics? We see a resurgence of xenophobia. We see a resurgence of the call for the Western Cape to be independent. We see the Zionist playbooks in terms of funding key parts of the South African different ministries. For example, the relationship with water supply in certain parts of the country, or 1 million trees and, planting trees, building up forests. And where is this money coming from? And why is this money being used in this particular way? So, and we need to talk about what is actually happening with the US involvement in politics in this country. So we see articles coming out with FBI, CIA assistance being sought in the case for the impeachment of the president, Cyril Ramaphosa. And so the same playbook of outside interferences and the leveraging of these interferences, which has happened during apartheid, to fracture, to destroy from within, is being replicated. And so some honest conversations and candidness need to, and accountability, self-accountability and self-introspection needs to happen. Because how can someone who is a Palestinian, who proudly stands in solidarity with Palestinians, or claims to be, continues to buy products and support products that are directly funding the genocide through sales? We're still booking on these booking websites, right? Our accommodations. We're still drinking these poisonous drinks. we are still buying from these, these camping outlets, etc. So, let's be clear about our individual accountability and our individual complicities, because it's very good and well, like, Comrade Jessica's talking about, in response to the state and institutional complicities. There is that other level which we're referring to here, which is this deep personal complicities that each one of us needs to really question. And I mean, for me, it was very telling that this land convoy happened during the days of Dhul Hijjah. Like, we had a not so Hajj, right? It is the same last 10 days of the period of Prophet Musa, peace and blessings be upon him, for the many Muslims that were on the convoy, that fought against Fir'aun and his oppression. And so it was very telling that we were, our comrades from Algeria and Tunisia spent Eid at a camp, in a campsite. That is the level of dedication that we've had. So, I mean, so the question is, how far do we want to go in deconstructing our own complicities? And how far are we willing to go in terms of our own discomforts and self-sacrifices? Because that's what this movement of a better world for all of us demands from each and every one of us. And we're up to the challenge.
Well, certainly, Dr. Fatima, and I think very, very profound in terms of the questions that you've raised. And I think these are hard questions, but we need to ask these questions to ourselves. And I'm sure from within ourselves, we can actually get the answers. We've got about 5 minutes to go. Zukiswa, starting with you, and we need to obviously wrap up. Just some final thoughts.
Final thoughts really is, I just finished reading a manuscript from a South African who was stationed in Palestine with an international organization. And one of the things that I have mentioned previously and other people have mentioned, and he really does bring forth very well, is South Africans, white South Africans who are converting to Judaism. So they become settlers in Palestine and removing Palestinian land. So Palestine has never been about religion. It's always been about settler colonialism. It's been about oppression. It's about colonization. That's one. Secondly, we've got some organizations in this country that I don't know, our laws we keep talking about, the importance of free speech. And I don't think that all free speech should be allowed, because it can be dangerous speech. We are all allowed to put our hand out in a fist, but my right to put my hand out in a fist ends where your nose begins. And so when you have organizations like South African Jewish Board of Deputies and South African Zionist Federation that during apartheid celebrated Percy Yuta, who was the prosecutor for Nelson Mandela, and they're still allowed space in our democratic space, and still allowed to, really push the hate that they keep doing. We need to question that, and we need to question why this is. And lastly, Palestine, I keep saying it's ground zero for our collective problems. So free Palestine, and we will be freed.
Well, certainly. And also, I think I must compliment you, Zukiswa. You positioned yourself so beautifully on the show, because behind me, I've noticed all those magnets on your fridge as well. No coal for Glencoe as well. So that features very, very prominently. So well done on that one, Zukiswa. Jessica, over to you. Final thoughts?
My final thought is just a simple one, and I'm just building off of what Fatima had said. So it's just a very simple human story. When we were on the convoy, when we were preparing to leave our first camp, everyone was packing all their bags and their tents, because we knew it was a long journey ahead. And I saw in the luggage section of the bus that there was a bicycle, like the 2 wheels and a bicycle. And I was very confused, but I didn't say anything. And then we started our journey. And after our first stop, then everyone took their bags out. And when I put my bag in, I saw that there was this bicycle again. And when we were in the buffer zone between Western East Libya, I saw the owner of this bicycle, a young man from Morocco, and he was putting it together. And I said, "Why did you bring your bicycle on the land convoy? We're in buses." And he said to me that the only thing he owns in his life is this bicycle, and he wants to give it to the people of Gaza. And he knows it's not much, and he knows materially it's not much, but it was his gesture. And this is, again, not to send to him. It's, I think, to just talk about the humanity of people, the gestures that people make, and how we might see this as a simple thing, but the response to gestures like this, the criminalization, the armed response, the attack of kindness, of humanity, is what really needs to keep us on our toes.
Well,
And
certainly,
his
and also I
bicycle
think
never did get to Gaza, but I hope that it does one day.
well, this is a story that's very, very touching. And I think we can draw, Dr. Fatima, we can just draw so much inspiration from a simple story like this. But the gesture is so huge. It's got such deep meaning, actually. And I think this is what we as South Africans need to embrace. This is the type of stories that need to go out to the masses as well. And hopefully, we're looking at the 20th of June. We're looking at our second march, Soweto to Gaza as well. Last year was very, in fact, a powerful statement. We had a guest. There was a mural that was painted in Soweto. And once again, this time around, we're looking at this from the church, from Regina Mundi Church to the mosque in Soweto as well. And I'm sure this time around, what I've also done, Dr. Fatima, is I've spoken to Ravonia Pillay as well. The global Sumud movement, very much a part and to feature, because your stories and the type of stories that Jessica is saying, these are the stories that need to go out.
It's radical love. It's radical love and holding each other in this special way. We talk about Ubuntu as this like abstract concept sometimes, but it really is holding each other and living with each other in our hearts, heart to heart. And I mean, we left this, I'm tearing because it's such a beautiful story. Like, we left Sirte in such a dramatic way, where the military just came and we were militarily forced to leave our camp. But what remains behind is a reconstructed toilets that were reconstructed by the engineers that were meant to go to Gaza. What is left behind are water tankers. What is left behind is a beautiful bus that's been painted onto the walls with spray cans, with directions of all the cities in Palestine. It's a huge mural on the wall at Sirte in Libya. So this eternal hope, and this that is grounded in radical love, and that will stand strong and will continue to be firm, holding each other as South Africans, as Africans, as people of the world together. And nobody can strip that away from us. Nobody. And that is the beauty and the stories that emerge every single day. And it's not a story about the other. It's our own stories about how we show up for each other. And we make that choice every single day. So
Well,
that's the beauty. So thank you so much, Brother Inayat and your entire team, for the initiatives that you're taking and continuing to make voice on this. Thank you. And
well,
also,
certainly we do appreciate it, and we thank people like yourself. This is where we draw our inspiration from as well, and I think together.
Yeah, can I also I must do this, please, because then the etiquette will be complete. Because Zukiswa was awarded an honorary doctorate, so I really want to acknowledge her. And Jessica's just finished her PhD, so she's also, so you have 3 doctors on the panel. 2 doctors and 1, almost doctor.
Absolutely. In fact, I wish you would have said that in the beginning.
Thank you.
We would list all of you as doctors. But now that you mentioned, once again, congratulations on your achievements as well, Dr. Zukiswa and Dr. Jessica as well. So we thank you. We do appreciate your time with us right here on Salam Media. And hopefully we will be meeting on the 20th of June with the walk Soweto to Gaza as well. And as I mentioned, the Global Sumud Flotilla movement is going to feature very, very prominently at that event as well. So all the best to you. We say shukran, jazakallah to all of you. Assalamu alaikum, and please take care.
Shukran.
Well, that brings us to the end of the second part of tonight's edition. And once again, another powerful discussion that has come through with regard to the Global Sumud land convoy, but also many other issues that we need to actually take heed of. And I think Dr. Fatima spoke about this as well, in terms of we need to internalize, we need to introspect as well on a personal level. And we know at an institutionalized level, at an organizational level, a lot that is taking place. But I think in terms of major contributions that we can also make is a contribution on our part with regard to taking heed of some of the issues that are playing around us, but also at the same time to make absolutely sure Dr. Fatima speaks about that poison in that bottle that we are drinking from, and that obviously could be a start as well. But with that, or it should be a start, and with that, I'm going to be taking leave of you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure being in the company of our listeners and viewers right here on this Wednesday evening in conversation with myself, Inaid Wadi. So from myself and the team, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.